James Caan, the actor, has passed away at the age of 82. Best known for his role as Sonny Corleone in The Godfather. Also, one of my favorites, he was Brian Piccolo in Brian's Song. He picked up an Oscar and Emmy nom for that. Whole bunch of other great ones. Loved Misery, where he's just held captive by Kathy Bates. That's a fun one as well. And I think a lot of people my age know him, unfortunately, or fortunate for him, but as the dad in Elf, and that whole situation there. So
iconic.
We'll run down the IMDb like we always do, but James Caan, 82, feels gone too soon.
Good run. Seemed like he was still doing well. Like you, I mean, I know that, you know, the Sonny Corleone, like The Godfather, that's supposed to be, you know, where my head goes for James Caan, but it's not. It is Misery. And I love that movie. I don't know why I had a fascination with that movie. I read the book. I even got to the point where I would tell people, hey, the book is way gnarlier. You should check it out. Like, I was one of those people. But now, like, looking back on it, that might be like the finest peak of his acting, because literally you're trapped in a house with Kathy Bates, who's no slouch on camera, you know? And it was essentially like a long running like play almost. You could have done that thing on stage. There was all these, you know, open-ended conversational pieces in it, and also times in that movie where like everything is done through a facial expression or something like that. I think it might have been the finest time, or the finest piece of his work, where you could really see the acting chops come out. As far as Elf goes, I remember seeing like the making of Elf, you know, and part of the whole dichotomy of that movie was the fact that, like, you know, apparently Jon Favreau and Will Ferrell were like pretty scared of James Caan, like on set. Like, even though he was like a nice enough guy, he still was like James Caan and freaked him out. And Will Ferrell, when he's like, you know, when he said he had to like tickle James Caan and do the scene like that, that it was like truly like disturbing, like you're about to get your head cut off, you know? Yes. So he had a real obvious, like, just power about his personality, and great actor, will be missed.
Yeah. So I kind of break his career down into 4 parts right here.
Okay.
So he starts doing the television thing, right? Which is like how most people broke in. But it was super hard to go, like, him going from TV to the movies is almost like a producer trying to become on-air talent. It just doesn't happen. Yeah. So and then in 1965 he gets The Glory Guys, which is kind of his first chance to get on the silver screen and do some of that. So for a while there, he's going back and forth between some movie stuff, some TV stuff, which is cool. But then, dude, Brian's Song happens, right? And then year after that, The Godfather, and we're off to the races. But the thing that I'm interested here is, so like we talk about him in the 70s, right? And he has his personal life is crazy in the 70s. I'll get to that right. in a little bit. But in 74, he does The Gambler, which, you know, they tried to remake that one with Mark Wahlberg, and Mark Wahlberg is not James Caan. I hate to break it to you out there. He's not James Caan.
No.
And then
he's too pure on the inside, Mark Wahlberg.
And then same year, Godfather Part 2, which is the greatest movie ever made. So that's the first half. 70s includes a stint of him living at the Playboy Mansion, where he said that if I didn't leave living there, I wouldn't be well adjusted for the outside world, and he couldn't live anywhere else. So it's like the opposite of prison, where it's like he's just living in the Playboy Mansion. He's like, man, I've been in the brig too long.
What are those conversations like, where like after like 4 months, you know, you just comes up to James Caan's room. He's like, James, like, you know, I know you're having fun here. Like, I know you're doing okay, but like, what's going on? You know, you can't be wearing my velvet robes like every day. You know, those are mine. Like, he had to draw the line at some point, right? I'm sure there's a lot of people who would like to perpetually live at the Playboy Mansion.
Oh, of course. Do you think that Hef got jealous? He's like, man, this guy is stealing. This guy's stealing the girls from me.
I don't get the impression Hef has gotten to his stature in life via jealousy. That
But
doesn't seem to be the way that dude operates.
if there was one guy who could make him shake a little bit, it'd be James Caan.
His 70s James Caan. Great body. He must have looked incredible by the pool.
Oh,
You know, those tight little curls in the chest.
in
Like,
the grotto.
just, yeah, hanging all glistening and sweaty in the grotto. I'm sure people really didn't mind him being around at the time. So what
Uh,
are we talking about in the 70s? A lot of drugs, a lot of sex, that kind of stuff.
that stuff, yeah, and which leads to depression and money problems, which makes the 80s very interesting because he has some family situations there. But just
Cocaine's
that,
a hell of a drug.
hell of a drug. And then we get to part 3 of his career, which I think is interesting. The 90s, and he has such a small part in Bottle Rocket and getting involved with Wes Anderson, and kind of like the launch of like indie cinema there, and like, you know, it kind of goes away from the studios to these independent filmmakers, which is pretty cool. And then the last part that we talked about is the Elf portion, but also in like the 2000 he has Elf, which kind of overshadows how popular his show Las Vegas was. So
Oh yeah, that's true.
and even as up until like a few years ago, James Caan was in like the podcast game, if you can believe it. So we're all, you know,
Oh,
he was always a guy that stuck with or went with what was happening and was very up on it. His son Scott, great actor, great filmmaker in his own right. So yeah, James Caan, heck of a legacy.
is the podcast like becoming the cliche equivalent of like doing coke in the 70s and 80s? like we're gonna look back in 20 years and be like, oh right, they had a podcast.
We were
Sure.
high up on it.
Yeah.